Hey everyone, welcome back to Pawpaw's Workshop. And if this is the first time that you're here, welcome to Pawpaw's Workshop. Today's video, we're making the Starbond logo in resin. Yeah, that's right. We're going to be carving it on the CNC machine, pouring it with the resin, and it's going to look absolutely fantastic. I have a few of the colors up here on the TV screen that you can see. And the micro powders that the Starbond company is offering is absolutely gorgeous. Today, for this Starbond logo sign, it only needs the red and the black, and of course the white for the background. So let's get right into how this sign was created. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different today. The sign's not going to be 100% finished. We're going to finish all of the hard stuff, everything except for the final clear coat. And the reason being is, recently, I just did a project and ran into a little bit of a problem. I want to show you what that problem was, how to correct it, and then we're going to put the clear coat on that project, and we're going to put the clear coat at the same time on the Starbond logo sign. So that will be on tomorrow's video. So I want to show you today how I want to start this sign from the very beginning, going into a lot of detail on how to set it up, design it, carve it, and mix and pour the resin. To begin this project, we need to go to the Google Images and find a logo. By doing so, you can look through and see a lot of different logos that are available. Now my board is already prepared and it has the white background. So I need to find a logo that's going to have that same white background that is long and thin. The logo that I chose is this one right here. I click on it and I can see a larger version of it. Now this is a picture or an image, if you will. You cannot carve directly from this. We're going to have to convert it to a file that we can use in VCarve Pro. Look and see the resolution. And this is 3017 by 714. So that's a very high resolution image that should do just fine. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy this image, and from there I'm going to bring it into VCarve Pro. When you start VCarve Pro, you have to set up the parameters of the board size, and this is a single-sided board that's 20.75 by 5.75, and of course it's 3/4 of an inch thick. And I'm using this in inches, and my Z0 is going to be on the surface of the material, and I'm using the center point as my reference point. And with all of that set, I'll hit click the OK button, and this gives me my work area and the size of my board. From there, all I need to do is paste, and my image is now on my work board. But again, I can't carve this. It's time to be able to create an image that we can actually carve. I'll come back over here to this menu, and what I'm looking for is the trace bitmap. By clicking on the trace bitmap, I can now convert this file over, and you can see the actual image. When you click on this right here, that is my trace bitmap, and I can make the adjustments. I do want black and white, and for the most part, I'm going to leave everything else alone on this because the image actually looks good. So I'm going to preview it just to make sure. You can see the image underneath. Those lines look very sharp. I like that. So just hit apply. There's no changes that need to be done. So now I have one image directly on top of the other. So let's close this, and now you can see the original image, and you can see the image that we created with the trace bitmap. It's time to get the original image out of the way. So with this highlighted, I'm now going to just move it up and out of the way. At this point, I can actually delete the original image, because quite frankly, I don't need it any longer. Now the new image that we created, I'm going to highlight it, and there's a couple of ways that I can put it into my work area. For this purpose, I'm just going to highlight it, and I'm going to use the little arrows and drag it up into place. You can also see that this image is too big to fit into the workspace, so we need to be able to reduce it. By coming right up here to the little corner, you can see the handles. You can grab the handle with the mouse and reduce the size, and then when you get the size that you think you like, click on this little icon, and now we can use this one and center it into our work area. So that gives you a second way to be able to have the placement of the image into the workspace. This centers it perfectly for you, and at this point let's remove the original image. Because this original file was such a high resolution, there's really nothing else that needs to be done to this image. So now let's move over to the tool paths. If you're new to VCarve, you need to be aware that there's a number of different tool paths that you can select. So let's look at a couple of them. This first one is a profile tool path, and I'm going to set the depth at 0.2 of an inch, and I'm going to use the 1/8 inch end mill to be able to do this. And of course you have to select the vectors. So let's highlight this file and select the vectors, and you'll see it change from the black color to this magenta color. And now we can move on with the different selections. The one selection you need to make sure of is that you need to cut on the inside. Right now it's selected to cut on the outside of the vector, and that would really distort things. So we'll change this and select it where it cuts on the inside of this tool path. The other selection that I like to use whenever I'm using the end mill is to be able to have the ramp where it actually gradually goes down. When you calculate this, and you're going to see the tool paths generated. When we do the preview, you're going to see missing elements. Look at the top of the star. It's not there. Look at the inside of the letters. You can see how it did not dig out that material. You're also missing the elements of the E. All of that is because the bit was actually too wide and it could not get into those areas. Another toolpath that is commonly used is the pocket. And it's going to produce, quite frankly, very similar results. But this is the pocket toolpath right here. And if we have it set up the same way with a 0.2 of an inch deep, and this is the 1/8 inch end mill. Let's skip down, hit calculate, and let's take a look at the toolpaths. You can see the toolpaths look just a little bit different now, but they're still missing elements. Let me click on the preview, and let's take a look and see what it looks like. You can see the top of the star is still missing, and the center part of the E is missing. But if you look at the Starbond itself, RBO, it did create the pocket, and that looks good. But we still need to be able to get the details to make this work. So let's go back to the toolpath, and this time we're going to select this one. This is for the V-carve, and that's going to give you the fine details that we need. Now there's a few different questions. We have a flat depth. I'm going to put in 0.15 of an inch. That means as the bit is cutting down, it's not going to go any deeper than 0.15 of an inch. That means, quite frankly, in the larger areas, such as the star, it'll cut down to the 0.15 of an inch, and then it will cut flat at the bottom. I changed colors so that you could see it better. But if you look at the Starbond word itself and the super glue, you can see how it created a point right down to the center of those letters. But if we zoom in close and look at the star, you can see how there is a flat bottom. And that is perfect. We really don't need to go any deeper than that, because remember, this is going to be filled with the resin itself. Before leaving this section, I renamed this tool path. Instead of having it as VCarve 1, I put it as star 90 for the 90-degree V-bit. Select the actual tool path, so that's highlighted. And now let's click on the icon to be able to save this G-code and this file. Now this is very simple. You only have the one tool path, and we're only saving the one tool path. So you just click on save, and this is the name of the file, the star 90V, and I'll hit save. Now with this side actually finished as far as the base coat of the white with the epoxy resin, we want to flip it over and concentrate on the back side. When we poured the white resin, you always have those drips that come underneath, and that needs to be sanded off. I put a towel down on the workbench to be able to protect that white finish. I don't want any undue scratches. The sanding disc that I'm using is from Starbond also. This is a 120 grit paper that I'm using that very quickly sands off those little epoxy resin divots and gets rid of them. I need to have this perfectly flat. So after just a very few minutes, the sanding is done. One last check to make sure that it's all smooth, and then it's time to bring this over and put it onto the CNC machine. My most common method to be able to hold the project board down is with the CA glue. Now this is the CA medium glue from Starbond, and I just put a small bead of glue on each piece of the tape. It does not take a lot of glue at all. I see so many people using way too much glue to be able to hold these projects down. Now, just to be on the safe side, I do have a little bit of an insurance policy, and I'm using the bump stops as a registration point. In a future video, I'm going to be redoing this table, and we're going to change the design. But for now, this is what I'm going to be using. And it's worked extremely well for the last number of years. Next, let's just spray a little bit of the accelerator onto the tape, and then I'll put the project board right down onto the other tape right against my bump stops. That's my registration point to know exactly where it's going to be. So hold that down for just a moment. Now it's time to move the CNC machine over to the start point. This is going to be my XY0 position. If you'll recall, at the very beginning of working with the VCarve Pro, I set the XY0 position right at the center of the project. I have the blue tape on the white resin just so that it doesn't mar when I marked my X for that center point. But you can see now the bit is directly over that X that's in the center of this project. I'm using the Open Build software to be able to control the CNC machines, and with the router in position, I'll set this at my 0, and that gives me my work home position. The next step is to set the Z-axis. So I'm going to raise up the bit a little bit. I'm going to get my probe and we'll Z this Z-axis. Now this probe that I'm using is one that I had made from scraps that were in my shop. The control panel that you see me plugging this into also is something that I had made in a previous video. And both work absolutely fantastic. It's amazing what you can find in your shop to be able to save a ton of money from buying the store-bought items. And this works fine. Now this is for the Z-axis only. I do have a 3-axis touch plate that I use when I use the bottom left corner to be able to probe. In the Open Build software, I hit probe, it goes through the operation, and now that is set. I can remove my touch plate and put it away. That G-code file that I had saved earlier, now I opened it up and you can see the file. Now the other thing that I can do also is hit simulate, and I can actually see that little blue dot. It will move and simulate exactly what it's going to be carving. But let me stop that and let's do the actual carving. I turned on the router, and the only thing that's left is to hit the run job, and it'll begin the carving. And of course, yes, I could have moved the blue tape, but I didn't. The blue tape actually doesn't hurt a single thing. It could be left on the whole time, but just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to be able to see it, I went ahead and removed the blue tape. Hopefully, you'll be able to see the letters a little bit easier this way. I think you'd have to agree that this is carving absolutely beautiful. Being able to carve through the resin makes very crisp, sharp lines, and it is an amazing product to be able to work with. Now, don't go anywhere. I did run into a problem, and I want to show you exactly how I corrected the problem. But for now, take a look and see just how gorgeous this is coming out. I want to take just a moment and let you see the Open Build software. You can zoom in on this image and you can follow that blue dot, and you can see exactly on the graphic representation exactly what the machine is carving. It was at about this point when I realized that there was a problem developing. These letters on the word superglue are actually slightly smaller than the word premium, and that in itself is okay. But when the letters start carving, you notice how the U is still into the white. On all the other letters, they had started out where they cut all the way through that white resin. You can also see how the letters and this line is much smaller. I've had many people ask, well, what causes this? And this usually comes up when we're dealing with stars with a flag. Why are the stars different? But you can see how the word premium and how this line is very prominent. And as you move over toward the right, this is going to start tapering down smaller. You can see the S and the U are normal, but then as the P, E, and R, it gets smaller and smaller as far as the depth. So there is a solution. After the carving was completed, I did some very detailed measurements using the Z-axis itself and found that this side of this board was 1.04 millimeters lower than the other side. Now there's a number of things that could cause that. The thickness of the board with this epoxy resin could be part of the problem, and just perhaps the work table itself was a little bit off. But even so, that very small amount, that 1 millimeter, made all the difference in the world. So how did I fix that? I actually raised up this board that 1.04 millimeters. Now this was maybe not the best way to do it, but because I'm using a glue and tape method, this worked really well. I just used a series of spatulas to be able to raise this up and act as shims to be able to have this height exactly where it needed to be, and then reran the project. I didn't have to change anything else other than just raising this up. The spatulas acted as a shim to hold this board exactly where it needed to be. And remember, it's only 1 millimeter difference. And you can see the results. The glue and tape method holds just fine. And the results, well, speak for themselves. This sign now looks absolutely fantastic. At this point, I don't know if it's the wasteboard or the thickness of the material that was out of alignment, but that'll be another video down the road. Now for the resin today, I'm using the Amazing Clear Cast, and this is a 2-part 1-to-1 ratio mix. So that's what I'm going to be using. The working time on this is about 30 to 40 minutes, and it cures in 24 to 48 hours. And this is the product by Illuminate. I use 2 cups because this is by volume, it is not by weight. And by using the 2 cups, I can measure this out exactly and just look to make sure that it's exactly the same going up to the line of the cup. With the cups side by side, I can look at it and it looks like I need just a little bit more of the part B just to get it where it's exactly even. The colors that I'm using is a Starbond black, which is an iron oxide pigment, and then I'm also using the Starbond bright red, again an iron oxide pigment. It's time now to combine part A and part B. I'm using the little popsicle stick to be able to scrape all of the resin into my container, because this is now the time when the clock starts running and I'll have 30 to 40 minutes of working time to be able to work with this resin. I want to scrape the sides out really thoroughly to get every bit of the resin out of this cup. And the same is true for part B. Again, I want to scrape every little drop out and get it into this one container. Now it's time to stir, and stir really well, scraping the sides often to make sure that you get all of this resin mixed together. You want to stir this mixture now a good 2 minutes. Now if you're new to working with the resins, this is not a complicated process. There's just a few basic steps that you need to be able to follow, and if you follow those steps, then you're going to have very successful results each and every time. At this point, I'm splitting the resin between 2 cups because I'm using 2 colors. I need a very small amount of the red, and then the bulk of the material is going to be the black color. I can't stress enough, using this black Starbond pigment, a little bit goes a long ways. So it takes just a tiny little bit for this resin to be able to get it completely black. So don't overdo here. Of course, the red, the same thing applies. A very little small amount goes a long ways. So I'm going to take that and put that into my cup also. So now the colors are taken care of and it's time to mix thoroughly. As I'm mixing up the red, I look at this and I'm really not liking this color. It's not the color that I really want. It is a definite red, but it looks like it has just a little bit of an orange tint in it. So I'm going to fix that. We're going to add a little bit of the ruby red, the mica powder, and help brighten up this color just a little bit. I'm doing a little bit of an experiment too. I took some acrylic paint and painted in the red. I want to see by sealing this MDF, medium density fiberboard, does it actually make any difference? Because the black portion with the words I did not seal. My guess is it's really not going to make a difference with this project. The real challenge is being able to have a steady hand to pour this epoxy resin into these letters. Now if you think this is hard, pouring this resin into these large letters. Wait till we move over and I'll start pouring the resin into the small ones. Now if you get a little bit of overflow onto the white part of the sign, not a big deal, because a lot of it can be wiped off, and the part that's not wiped off, tomorrow after this is dry, a little light sanding is going to take care of the rest of it. After pouring all of the resin into the word Starbond, I noticed that there was quite a few bubbles. So I'm taking this opportunity just to hit it lightly with the torch, and that will pop those bubbles. The trick to being able to take care of the small letters is to use a syringe. I put the epoxy resin into the syringe, and then I have a lot more control over being able to direct the flow of this epoxy. Is it perfect? No, but it is a lot better. And it definitely helped to speed up the process to be able to get all of these small letters filled with the resin. I used the same technique with the red to fill in the star and the line all the way around. The syringe really made a difference. The color red with the bright red that I used and the ruby red mica powder is absolutely gorgeous. It really makes it pop and looks fantastic. I'm glad that I added that into the mix. All that's left now is, once this is dry, I'll give it a light sanding, and then I'll put the clear coat on top of it. Well, the Starbond sign is almost finished. The only thing that's left is a light sanding after it dries and putting the clear coat on it. Now I'm going to stop the video here for really two reasons. One, this is starting to get a little bit long, and the other reason is I'm going to put the clear coat on tomorrow. But I'm also using this clear coat for another project also, because I ran into a problem that I want to discuss with you on another project. So I'll mix up the clear coat for both of them at the same time, and then we'll be able to see the results on both of these different projects. So I hope that you enjoyed this video today, and I hope you was able to learn a few things. And if you did, by all means, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and the little bell notification. I really appreciate each and every one of you watching these videos, and I'm hoping that you're able to learn a lot of good information that you can take and use in your shop and make some really fantastic projects. So until next time, I look forward to seeing you real soon. So for now, bye-bye.